Mrs. Hendricks? I turned towards the unexpected voice interrupting our family dinner to see a sharply dressed man at the doorway. I'm Kenneth Briggs, a private investigator. He stepped inside, ignoring Derek's questioning look. I have some sensitive information regarding your husband. My heart raced as Briggs withdrew a manila envelope. Mrs. Hendricks, I regret to inform you that your husband has been involved in an affair for the past 8 months. The room fell silent as Derek's fork clattered onto his plate. I felt the blood drain from my face as Briggs removed a sheaf of photographs, each one a nauseating gut punch. There was Derek, locked in intimate embraces with a slender brunette whose face I instantly recognized, my estranged younger sister, Elise. You lying, cheating bastard! I erupted, shattering the stillness. Bile rose in my throat as I hurled the photos across the table, uncaring that our teenage daughters flinched at the venom in my voice. Derek's complexion turned ashen. Marla, I can explain. Like hell you can. I cut him off with a sweep of my hand, chest heaving with anger and betrayal. How could you do this to me, to our family? I gestured at our girls, faces contorted with shock and confusion. Mrs. Hendricks, Briggs spoke evenly, I have documented evidence of your husband systematically draining finances and diverting assets to fund his indiscretions with your sister over the past several months. The despair sliced through me, sharp as a knife. I had suspected Derek's distance, the constant business trips and late nights, but Elise? My own flesh and blood? My temple throbbed as waves of rage threatened to drown me. I'm leaving for Shanghai tonight on an urgent business trip, Derek abruptly announced, rising from his chair. Defiance flashed across his taut features. When I return, we'll discuss this rationally like adults. Don't bother coming back, I shouted after his retreating figure. I whirled towards Elise's damning photos, still strewn across the tablescape amidst our half-eaten dinner. My life as I knew it lay in ruins, but I would not surrender so easily. Mustering every ounce of composure, I turned to face my bewildered daughters. This changes nothing for you two, I stated, my voice fortified with a conviction I didn't quite feel. Your father and I stumbled over the words, tasting ashes on my tongue. We're going through a difficult time, but I promise you we'll get through this. Their frightened expressions twisted the knife deeper into my heart. I watched numbly as they fled the maelstrom of shattered trust and heartbreak, now consuming the home I'd thought was unshakable. Briggs remained an uncomfortable witness. My services have been paid in full to provide you with all available documentation, he remarked, sliding the envelope towards me. I'm sorry, Mrs. Hendricks. No wife deserves this. An icy calm insulated me as I accepted the file. Don't be sorry, Mr. Briggs. My voice hardened with grim resolution. Be ready, because I'm just getting started. The hours blurred together after Derek's abrupt departure. I paced the hallways of our home, a gilded cage now tainted by his deception. Framed photos mocked me at every turn, snapshots of happier times twisted into bitter lies. I sank onto the bed we once shared, cradling my throbbing head. How could the man I loved, the father of my children, betray me so callously? And with Elise, of all people, my own sister? Trembling fingers traced the sharp lines of Derek's deceit, immortalized in Briggs' damning photos. An animalistic rage seethed within me, screaming for vengeance. I envisioned hurling plates, diamonds, bricks, anything to shatter the man who had shattered my world, without a shred of remorse. But I couldn't lash out recklessly, not with custody of the girls at stake. I had to remain level-headed, strategic. Derek's smug assertion that we'd discuss this rationally still rankled, as if he could whitewash his transgressions with empty platitudes. No, I needed a plan, a way to strike back and regain control, to ensure he and Elise faced the consequences they deserved. The echo of the front door slamming ricocheted through the stillness, jarring me from my stupor. I tensed, but familiar footsteps ascended the staircase. Hey! Theo's concerned face appeared in the doorway. Of course, he had rushed over after hearing the news. My dear friend and the best divorce attorney in the state. Wordlessly, I handed him the file, watching his expression contort with disbelief and anger as he examined the indisputable proof. That lying sack of shit, he growled at last, raking calloused fingers through his graying hair. Don't mince words, Theo, I replied with a hollow laugh. Just tell me honestly, what are my options? His jaw tightened grimly. We build an ironclad case. Hit him where it hurts, his money, his assets, his reputation. With evidence like this, he waved the folder in emphasis, we bury the bastard. A vindictive thrill coursed through me at the thought of skinning Derek for every last penny, to leave him destitute and disgraced as penance for his crimes. Good, I stated, steeling my voice, because I want it all. Every sordid detail, every illicit transfer of marital assets exposed, he doesn't get to slink away unscathed. Theo's expression shifted to one of cautious concern. Marla, think this through. Once we expose him, there's no going back. Your marriage, your lives together. It'll all be destroyed, played out in open court for everyone to dissect. Can you live with that? I felt my expression harden into a rictus carved from ice. Theo, he destroyed my life the moment he betrayed me with my own sister, I replied with frigid clarity. Now I'm going to destroy his. Those final words unleashed a twisted sense of dark satisfaction. For too long, I had been the victim, the deceived wife, the embarrassed sister, the fool, but no longer. If Derek and Elise wanted the gloves off, I would oblige them. Starting today, I was going on the attack. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of grim determination. On Theo's advice, I began methodically collecting evidence to solidify my case against Derek and Elise. When the private investigator's report confirmed my worst fears that Derek had been systemically siphoning money and assets to fund his tawdry affair, a cold fury insulated me. I felt icy detachment transcend the devastating anguish of his betrayal. First, I discreetly transferred the contents of our joint accounts to a new one under my name alone, ensuring Derek would be unable to drain our finances further. The numbers swam before my eyes, each pilfered figure another twist of the knife in my gut. Next came compiling the paperwork. Copies of bank statements, unexplained expenditures, mortgage transfers, all blatantly suspicious. Theo assured me we had more than enough to decimate Derek's falsely cultivated facade of martial bliss and business success. We also need to figure out your living situation, he advised during one late-night strategy session, the shadows accentuating his frown lines. If you stay in the house, it just gives Derek's lawyers more ammunition to claim you condoned his actions. I worried my bottom lip, reluctant to uproot our daughters' lives any more than necessary. But Theo made a fair point. Any delay could jeopardize my custody claim. Surprising even myself, I found the answer immediately. My friend Lena? She has that big place in Hudson after her divorce. Theo's eyebrows arched in approval. The financial advisor who hates cheaters? Perfect. She'll make an amazing ally and witness. Sure enough, one phone call was all it took for Lena to open her doors without question. What day do you need me, hon? Her smoky voice crackled over the line, full of the vinegar and vulnerability that characterized survivors like us. Within 36 hours, I had packed up what little I could carry of our old life and ushered the girls into Lena's guest rooms. To their shell-shocked whispers about this only being temporary, I forced a reassuring smile that was only partially a lie. Chin up, ladies, Lena commanded, wrapping us in her signature embrace, rich curls cascading around her warm features. We've got your backs. Count on that. As we hunkered in the cocoon of Lena's hospitality, I felt the first flickers of hope reigniting inside me, that Derek and Elise's transgressions wouldn't go unavenged, and that a path forward still remained. Then the phone rang, shattering the moment's fragile complacency. Derek's number flashed across the screen, and an icy chill gripped me. The first volley was about to be fired. I stared at Derek's number flashing insistently on the screen. A twisted part of me longed to answer, to confront him with the full depth of his betrayal. But I knew better than to show my hand prematurely. Lena, I called out, can you join me? Within moments, her concerned features appeared in the hallway. Is everything okay? Wordlessly, I tilted the phone towards her. Understanding flickered across her expression as Derek's number buzzed again. Want me to take this? I nodded gratefully. Lena was ex-military, unflappable and strategic, the perfect shield against Derek's manipulation. She accepted the call, angling the mouthpiece away. Derek, her tone was clipped but composed. Marla's indisposed at the moment. There was a muffled torrent from the other end. I saw Lena's jaw tighten imperceptibly. I'm sure she'll reach out when she's ready to discuss things rationally. Appointed Barb. For now, it's best you give her some space to process recent developments. Another eruption of protests. this one raising Lena's sculptured brows. I didn't realize rehashing sensitive family matters was appropriate workplace conversation, she rejoined coolly. But I'll pass along your thoughts to Marla. Goodbye, Derek. She disconnected the call with a succinct tab. Sorry about that, Han. I know that couldn't have been easy listening to his nonsense. A tremulous exhale escaped me. You're amazing, Lena, truly. She waved a dismissive hand. Please, that blowhard doesn't rattle me. Her warm eyes creased with concern. But you look like you're carrying the weight of the world right now. What else can I do? I felt a renewed surge of purpose. Actually, there is one thing. An hour later, we were closeted in Lena's luxurious home office, poring over the meticulously assembled dossier that would become the armament for my legal battle. Lena shook her head slowly as she absorbed the bank statements, check stubs, and appalling money trail. This is embezzlement, plain and simple. He bled you dry to keep that little harlot satisfied. My voice was toneless. The sad part? He thought I'd never find out, that I was too busy or too oblivious to ever piece it all together. Her sculpted features contorted with disgust. What a delusional, selfish prick. Well, the delusion ends now. I clicked over to the shared portfolio, watching the figures populate. These are all the holdings and assets Derek can legally access. Understanding flickered in Lena's obsidian eyes. And you want to lock him out? I nodded curtly. Every last dime gets retitled under my sole name, investments, real estate, liquid securities. He doesn't get to touch a penny of what's rightfully mine until the courts decide otherwise. Lena's dexterous fingers danced across the keyboard, initiating transfers and updated credentials. Consider it done. That money-grubbing liar is officially cut off. Her expression shifted as she decrypted another subfolder. Marla, what are these numbered accounts in the Caymans? I felt my cheeks flush as fragments of hushed conversation suddenly clicked into place. You're telling me that arrogant bastard was hoarding money offshore this entire time? She let out a slow whistle. And not just chump change, either. Her deft strokes isolated each account, each one more grossly embellished than the last. He could have been diligently saving for our future, our retirement. The bitterness was acid on my tongue. Instead, he pulled an economic 9/11 on us to secure his little hideaway nest with a lease. Lena's elfish features contorted with revulsion. Well, this is step too far. He can't just go burying assets and flaunting the law like that. I realize that now. My hands curled into fists as the magnitude of his duplicity hit me in waves. That duplicitous son of a bitch. Lena reached over and squeezed my arm, her touch steadying. Hey, we'll nail him for this, I swear. He's not getting away with pillaging your hard-earned nest egg. Jaw tightened with resolution. I held her gaze levelly. You're damn right, he won't. Not on my watch. The next few weeks became an intricate choreography of shielding myself from Derek's manipulations and shoring up my defenses. Thanks to Lena's Herculean efforts, all our major assets had been retroactively retitled under my singular ownership, staunching the financial hemorrhaging. Not that Derek didn't try to regain control. His calls and texts blew up my phone in increasingly erratic increments, peppering his demands with hollow protestations of innocence and misguided love. Marla, I know you're upset, but can't we talk this through like rational adults? I'm still your husband, and I demand. Towards the end, even the girls noticed, flinching at the shrill tones distorting from the speakers. I forestalled their concerned questions with reassuring smiles and stated that their father just needed some time. In reality, I had both dreaded and anticipated this escalation in Derek's behavior. So I followed Theo's counsel in documenting every irate voicemail, every unhinged text diatribe. More damning proof for the legal battleground that loomed ahead. To mute my inner turmoil, I receded inwards, letting a fortifying detachment insulate me. I no longer dwelled on the gutting anguish of his betrayal, nor the gaping void his calloused disregard had eviscerated. Instead, I simply existed. Day to day, checking the obligatory boxes with the armor of detachment, deflecting the numbing currents of fury, regret, and occasional pity that taunted me. Theo assured me this emotional icebox was normal, even advisable. Feeling is the enemy right now, Marla. It'll just cloud your judgment and give Derek's shysters an opening. Nevertheless, the customary rituals of my old life still haunted me like ghostly sentinels, mocking the hollowness of my existence. I found myself jolting awake in panic at 3 a.m., bitter at the loss of the partner who had once slumbered beside me, reassuring and sheltering. Who had that man been? The one I committed 20-something years to? Or had he died long ago, subsumed by the sociopsychic monster who now reviled me? Desperate for an outlet, I immersed myself in maintaining the vestiges of normalcy for the girls, ensuring their schedules and activities persisted with minimal disruption. Blessing Lena's hospitality for providing a cocoon of security, however fleeting it might prove. Still, their troubled frowns whenever Derek's name arose spoke volumes. How much longer could I reasonably postpone revealing the truth? That the father figure they had idolized was well on his way to becoming a pariah? That our family nucleus was splintering beyond repair? They were sharp, precocious young ladies. They would eventually discern that the ensuing divorce was no amicable separation. I found myself craving other distractions, any diversion to divert my mind from its ceaseless spools of recrimination and dismay. With Lena's encouragement, I gingerly resumed my passion projects like painting and weaving, channeling my pent-up tempests into intricate line work and fractal textures. I joined her twice-weekly boxing sessions at an exclusive boutique gym, relishing the euphoric simplicity of repeatedly pummeling the heavy bag in controlled bursts of exertion. My therapist, Dr. Ramirez, applauded these efforts towards self-reclamation during our bi-weekly visits. A serene, maternal presence, she nonetheless stressed the necessity of working through the grieving process. "You're building impressive fortifications, Marla, but you can't wall off the pain indefinitely. It will find cracks, erode your defenses. Let yourself experience the waves of hurt, then release them with intentional healing. It's the only way to fully excise the toxins he inflicted." Even the good doctor's empathetic counsel sparked flickering prickles of resentment. Hadn't I endured enough psychological carnage already? Why should I purposefully immiserate myself by treading through the minefield of what was and what could have been? 10 agonizing days after his abrupt departure, Derek finally returned from his supposed business trip. I braced myself, squaring my shoulders as Theo and I waited in Lena's vestibule. The familiar crunch of tires on gravel heralded his arrival. I gripped the thick dossier tighter, its damning contents fortifying my resolve. The front door burst open and Derek blustered inside, withering slightly at the sight of Theo. "Why am I not surprised you're here?" he sneered. "This is the part where you start listening for once in your miserable life," Theo stated flatly. Derek opened his mouth, no doubt to spew more indignant dismissals, but I cut him off. No more lies. My voice was glacial. No more deceptions, delusions, or pitiful attempts to gaslight me. With surgical precision, I unfurled the gallery of photos, spreadsheets, and documentation across the sofa. Derek's complexion ashen as the incriminating evidence of his malfeasance proliferated. "Not only have you been serially unfaithful," I heard my tone acquire a razor's edge, "but you've been slowly looting our accounts, pillaging our assets to fund your sad little tryst with my sister." His Adam's apple bobbed rapidly as panic crept into his expression. "Marla, I can explain ever. Save your rationalizations. They're meaningless at this point." I shoved aside his grasping hands, the paper seeming to sear his fingertips. "Your signature is on every bank draft, every wire transfer, every unauthorized disbursement of funds, plain as day." Derek's facade finally cracked, ugliness twisting his features. "So that's it, then? A few indiscretions, and you're burning everything to the ground? Our marriage, my career, our family legacy?" "Your indiscretions have already detonated our family," I exploded, infusing every ounce of scorn and disgust into the words. "I don't recognize the pathetic bastard standing before me anymore." "You self-righteous bitch," he erupted with a sudden primal fury that made Theo tense instinctively. "You think you can publicly flog me like some criminal without consequences?" My answering smile was as frigid as Antarctic ice. "I relish those consequences, Derek, because in the end, you'll be broke, alone, and utterly disgraced. A shunned, soiled nothing, while I walk away from the ashes." Chin jutting in a final petulant display of contempt, he turned on his heel and stormed out. But even his exaggerated bluster couldn't disguise the dawning horror on his face. He knew he was cornered, outmaneuvered. Checkmate. That night, even my dreams offered no sanctuary. I found myself crying hot, angry tears, not from sorrow, but from a place of visceral rage that this utter waste of a man had dared to betray me so profoundly, to squander every ounce of goodwill, trust, and commitment I'd so foolishly vested in him. But the tears were also cathartic, lancing years of pent-up disillusionment and deception. As the howling echoes of Derek's classically juvenile tantrums faded, a steely resolve cemented within me. No more would I be the victim, the pretty little ornament masking the rot festering beneath. From this point forward, I would be the vengeful architect of his self-destruction, and every psychological dagger, every precisely calibrated legal maneuver would serve as the instruments of that exquisite retribution. I would burn it all down and salt the earth, just like he deserved. In the days following Derek's meltdown, I wasted no time capitalizing on the initiative. Utilizing my collated evidence, I filed for an at-fault divorce on grounds of adultery, abandonment, and the unauthorized dissipation of marital assets. While part of me recoiled at the prospect of airing our imploded marriage's dirty laundry in open court, another part recognized the strategic value. By striking first with an overwhelming offense, I seized control of the narrative while blindsiding Derek. "He'll be scrambling to build a defense on multiple fronts," Theo assured me, typically unflappable demeanor, betraying a hint of dark satisfaction. "Let's see him lawyer up to counter all these interlocking claims." True to form, Derek soon found himself engulfed under an avalanche of damaging disclosures. The paternity allegations alone were enough to decimate what remained of his professional reputation. Coupled with the fraud and asset disclosures, they cemented his status as a radioactive pariah. By leveraging my carefully assembled documentation and testimony, my legal team constructed an inescapable cage of consequences. Surveillance evidence placed him at hotels and rendezvous spots, often withdrawing substantial cash amounts just beforehand. Banking records revealed his establishment of slush fund accounts and wire transfers to international holding locations. Even more damaging were the third-party testimonies of Elise's indiscriminate confessions to family members, of Derek's increasingly callous behavior towards me and the girls, and the contradictory paper trails he left behind while cavorting with his mistress. Within weeks, the court of public opinion had sentenced Derek as guilty. Long before our divorce could be formalized or the civil trials concluded, the man was an utter professional and personal pariah. "You did this," he raged during one ill-advised confrontation. "My colleagues won't even speak to me anymore." I merely shrugged. "I'm simply disclosing facts and letting people draw their own conclusions, Derek. If they're judging you harshly, perhaps that's indicative of your actions." The expression contorting his face oscillated between apoplectic rage and sheer panic. It was abundantly clear he had never contemplated the full-scale, mutually assured destruction I was orchestrating. That his ego had blinded him to the very real prospect of a life in ashes. Watching his mounting desperation furnished a deeply vindicating gratification. My emotional resurrection seemed to flourish in inverse proportion to his self-inflicted ruination. I found myself giving media interviews with selective, surgically precise responses. Posed photos were art directed to present me as the quintessential wounded but resilient heroine, steadfastly soldiering forward for her innocent children. Conversely, every interaction and court appearance saw Derek further unraveling into an erratic, sullen caricature of the urbane success he once feigned. It became undeniable that his simmering, thwarted indignation constituted the final death rattle of ego before total annihilation. For any residual pity I might have felt for the man rapidly dissipated. In its place blossomed an almost rapturous sense of karmic inevitability. This was always his destiny, to be outwitted and outmaneuvered by the woman he so casually discarded in pursuit of instant gratification. Not that I would brandish the bloody coup as some Amazon's war prize, but by maintaining an outward veneer of gracious composure, I let the debris of Derek's immolation serve as its own cautionary testament. Fool me once, shame on you, but to self-destruct so thoroughly despite every opportunity for redemption? Well, that unmitigated failure of character was his alone, inscribed across the ashes of his legacy. Despite the protracted legal battles, the divorce itself was a mere formality at this point. Derek's derelictions were so overwhelming, so undeniably malicious, that the proceedings proved utterly one-sided. The court awards sole custody to Mrs. Hendricks in addition to a substantial majority of liquid assets and properties, the judge stated in clipped, dispassionate tones. Mr. Hendricks' conduct represents a complete abrogation of his familial duties and marital vows. Across the aisle, Derek slumped in his seat, a pathetic, broken husk animating what remained of his publicly immolated reputation. Gone were the immaculate suits and assured airs. He sat there, hollowed and ashen in discarded clothes, reeking of whiskey and sleepless nights. His eyes remained downcast, unable to meet my unflinching gaze. As the gavel declared the marriage officially dissolved, I felt an unfamiliar pang reverberate through me. Not sorrow or regret, those indulgences were distant memories. No, this was the exhilarating release of a burden, shackles tough to the soul being struck off with a stark finality. Theo clasped my shoulder, his calloused grip anchoring me back to the moment. "It's done," he murmured with a barely perceptible nod. "He got everything he deserved." My smile was equally understated yet serene. No, he got far less than that. In the hellish months that followed, Derek's descent charted a tragicomic freefall. Once an upwardly mobile banking executive, his professional pedigree mutated into permanent radioactive toxicity. Every job opportunity disintegrated as cagey references shared the cautionary chronicle of his philandering, misogyny, and white-collar embezzlement. Even his closest business associates distanced themselves, justifiably wary of being tainted by association with such a comprehensive implosion. From that inferno emerged my total legal and moral vindication. But more importantly, it heralded an emancipation from the shattered dreams and profound delusions that had anchored me to that wretched man for so long. The assets I had wrenched from Derek's grasp furnished me a revitalizing new lease on life. Within 6 months, I had liquidated our marital residence and invested in a sleek, elevated townhome in a more vibrant, re-energized area of the city, closer to the girls' schools and extracurriculars. No longer shrouded in spatial mementos of trauma and despair, I found myself blossoming back into my truest self. Career opportunities that had stagnated during my marriage rekindled with fresh fire. Artist collectives and nonprofits welcomed my talents with open arms. Even the girls seemed to thrive in this regenerative environment. The pinched, haunted wariness that had clouded their expressions steadily lifted. Recitals, matches, and events no longer triggered bristled silences, where Derek's absence loomed like an unexploded mortar. We were free. Wandering the farmers' markets and cultural festivals that epitomized our new neighborhood's beating heart, I could almost physically feel their tension eroding beneath the purifying sunshine of autonomy. Almost cruelly, I ensured Elise received no such comforts. My lawsuits alleging her complicity in the depletion of marital assets continued unabated. Just as the courts had scoured Derek of every ill-gotten gain, so too would she face devastating financial repercussions. Petty recompense, some might argue. But such was the emotional ruinscape she had indulged in seeding that I felt no mercy. In fact, I made it a point to routinely update her on her dwindling legal circumstances, now that pride and perjury charges were being considered. Let her endure even a fraction of the torment she helped inflict, watching her greed and wanton selfishness facilitate her own undoing. Some called it overkill. I called it karma, finally delivered. The only pity I retained was for my former self, the myopic, naively devoted woman who had anchored her identity to a depraved lie and a despicable con man. The hard-learned lessons had flayed that identity until only truth remained. Perhaps that was the true path to healing, embracing these harsh revelations as brusque awakenings rather than debilitating traumas, to finally see the withered, desiccated remnants exposed, while turning my gaze to the vibrant sunlight and new horizons untainted by past poisons. Staring clear-eyed into the expanse of second chances, I found myself eager to begin anew. The letter trembled in my hands, its contents threatening to shatter the peaceful life I'd built. I read it again, hoping the words would somehow rearrange themselves into something less devastating. They didn't. "Sarah?" Ethan's voice floated up from downstairs. "Everything okay?" I swallowed hard, stuffing the letter into my pocket. "Fine, honey. Just sorting through some old papers." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. Ethan and I had always prided ourselves on our honesty. But how could I confront him with this? How could I ask my husband of 15 years if he'd been living a double life? I made my way downstairs, plastering on a smile as I entered the kitchen. Ethan stood at the stove, stirring a pot of his famous chili. The domestic scene felt surreal now, tainted by the weight of the secret in my pocket. "There you are," he said, flashing me that boyish grin that had first stolen my heart. "Taste this for me, will you?" I obliged. Letting the spicy flavors dance on my tongue, it was delicious as always. But the warmth of the chili couldn't chase away the chill that had settled in my bones. "Perfect," I managed, forcing a smile. Ethan's brow furrowed. "You sure you're okay, Sarah? You look a little pale." I waved off his concern. "Just tired from work. Nothing a good night's sleep won't fix." He nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Well, dinner's almost ready. Why don't you set the table?" As I laid out plates and silverware, my mind raced. Should I confront him now? Or wait until I had more proof? The letter had been anonymous, after all. But the details, they were too specific to be a random accusation. We sat down to eat, the silence between us growing heavier with each passing moment. Ethan chatted about his day at the office, oblivious to my inner turmoil. "Oh, I almost forgot," he said suddenly. "Your sister called earlier. She wants us to come over for dinner this weekend." I nearly choked on my chili. "Lisa? What did she want?" Ethan shrugged. "Just to catch up, I guess. It's been a while since we've seen her." My grip tightened on my fork. "Lisa." Of course she'd be involved in this somehow. Our relationship had always been strained, but this was a new low, even for her. "I don't think that's a good idea," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. Ethan looked up, surprised. "Why not?" "I thought you two were trying to patch things up." I laughed bitterly. "Patch things up? Lisa's never cared about anyone but herself." "Sarah," Ethan said, his tone gentle, "what's really going on? You've been acting strange all evening." For a moment I considered telling him everything, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I pushed back from the table, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I need some air," I muttered, heading for the door. "Sarah, wait." But I was already gone, stepping out into the cool night air. My hand slipped into my pocket, fingers brushing against the crumpled letter. I pulled it out, reading it one more time in the dim glow of the porch light. The words seemed to mock me now. "Your husband isn't who you think he is. Ask him about July 15th, 2010. Ask him about the cabin in the woods. Ask him about the baby." I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. When I opened them again, I saw Ethan watching me from the window, concern etched across his face. In that moment, I knew our life would never be the same. The perfect marriage, the successful careers, the plans for our future. It all felt like a house of cards, ready to come crashing down. And somewhere out there, I was sure Lisa was laughing. I stood outside Lisa's apartment, my hand poised to knock. The familiar dread I always felt around my younger sister churned in my stomach. But I needed answers, and Lisa was the only one who might have them. Taking a deep breath, I rapped on the door. Moments later, it swung open, revealing Lisa's perfectly made-up face and designer outfit. "Well, well," she drawled, leaning against the doorframe. "If it isn't my successful big sister, to what do I owe the pleasure?" I pushed past her into the apartment, ignoring her sarcasm. "We need to talk, Lisa." She closed the door, her eyes narrowing. "About what?" I pulled the crumpled letter from my pocket, thrusting it towards her. About this. "Did you send it?" Lisa barely glanced at the paper. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't play dumb," I snapped. "It's about Ethan. About a baby. What do you know?" For a split second, something flashed across Lisa's face. Surprise? Fear? But it was gone so quickly, I couldn't be sure. "Sarah," she said, her voice dripping with condescension, "I think you're losing it. Why would I know anything about Ethan's secrets?" I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to shake her. "Because you've always been jealous of what Ethan and I have. You've always tried to come between us." Lisa laughed, the sound grating on my nerves. "Oh, please, not everything is about you, sis. Maybe Ethan just got tired of playing house with Little Miss Perfect." Her words hit me like a slap. "What's that supposed to mean?" She shrugged, moving to pour herself a glass of wine. "Nothing. Just that maybe there's more to your precious husband than you know." I watched her, my suspicion growing. "You do know something, don't you? Tell me, Lisa, what happened on July 15th, 2010? The wine glass froze halfway to her lips. "What?" "July 15th, 2010, I repeated. "The cabin in the woods. The baby. What do you know?" Lisa set down her glass, her composure slipping. I don't know what you're talking about, but I could see the lie in her eyes. You're protecting him, I realized. Why? What hold does Ethan have over you? Get out, Lisa hissed, her face flushing. You're crazy, Sarah. Always have been. Always will be. I stood my ground. Not until you tell me the truth. Lisa's eyes darted around the room, like a cornered animal. Then suddenly she lunged for her phone on the coffee table. What are you doing? I demanded. Calling Ethan, she spat. He needs to know how unhinged his wife has become. I moved without thinking, grabbing her wrist. Don't you dare. We struggled for a moment, Lisa's manicured nails digging into my skin. In the scuffle, a framed photo on the side table crashed to the floor. We both froze, staring at the shattered glass. And that's when I saw it. A glimpse of a photo I'd never seen before, half hidden under the broken frame. I bent down, my heart pounding. It was a picture of Lisa and Ethan. They were standing in front of a small wooden cabin, Ethan's arm around Lisa's waist, and Lisa was holding a baby. The room spun around me as I picked up the photo with trembling hands. What is this? Lisa's face had gone pale. Sarah, I can explain. But I was already backing away, the truth hitting me like a tidal wave. My sister, my husband, a secret child. How could you? I whispered, my voice breaking. Lisa reached for me, her eyes pleading. Sarah, please. I shoved past her, stumbling out of the apartment. The last thing I heard was Lisa's voice calling after me. Sarah, wait, you don't understand. But I understood all too well. As I ran down the stairs, clutching the damning photo, I realized that everything I thought I knew about my life had been a lie. And the worst part? This was only the beginning. The drive to Ethan's parents' house was excruciating. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, as Ethan chatted about work beside me. How could he act so normal when our world was crumbling? Sarah? Ethan's voice broke through my thoughts. You missed the turn. I jerked the wheel, making a sharp U-turn. Sorry, I was distracted. Ethan frowned. You've been distracted a lot lately. Is everything okay? I wanted to scream, to confront him about the photo, about Lisa, about everything, but not here, not now. I'm fine, I lied, just stressed about work. We pulled into Lyle and Martha's driveway, the familiar two-story colonial looming before us. I'd always felt welcome here, but today the house seemed to hold secrets of its own. Martha greeted us at the door, her smile warm but her eyes sharp. Sarah, dear, and Ethan, my boy. Come in, come in. As we stepped inside, I noticed Martha's gaze lingering on Ethan, a silent exchange passing between them. My suspicion deepened. Lyle emerged from his study, clapping Ethan on the back. Good to see you, son. Sarah, you're looking lovely as ever. We settled in the living room, making small talk about work and the weather. But there was an undercurrent of tension, like a live wire running beneath the polite conversation. So, Martha said, setting down her teacup, when are you two going to give us some grandchildren? The question hit me like a punch to the gut. I saw Ethan stiffen beside me. Mom, he said, his voice strained, we've talked about this. Sarah and I are focused on our careers right now. Martha's eyes narrowed. But surely you want children, Ethan. You've always been so good with kids. Something in her tone made me sit up straighter. What do you mean, Martha? She waved a hand dismissively. Oh, you know, he's always been a natural with children. Remember that summer you spent volunteering at the youth camp, Ethan? Ethan's face had gone pale. That was a long time ago, Mom. Summer camp? I asked, my heart racing. When was this? Oh, must have been, 2010? Martha said, her eyes never leaving Ethan's face. 2010. The year from the letter. The year in the photo with Lisa and the baby. Ethan never mentioned a summer camp, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. Lyle cleared his throat. Perhaps we should change the subject. No, I interrupted, turning to Ethan. I'd love to hear about this camp. Was it near a cabin in the woods by any chance? The room went deathly silent. Ethan's face was a mask of shock and guilt. Martha set down her teacup with a clatter. I think I need some fresh air, she announced, hurrying out to the patio. I stood up, my legs shaky. I'll join you, Martha. Outside, the cool air did nothing to calm my racing heart. Martha was leaning against the railing, her back to me. You know, don't you? I said quietly. About Ethan and Lisa. About the baby. Martha's shoulders sagged. She turned to face me, her eyes brimming with tears. Oh, Sarah, I'm so sorry. We never meant for you to find out like this. So it's true, I whispered, my world shattering around me. Martha reached for my hand, but I pulled away. It's complicated, dear. There's so much you don't understand. Then help me understand, I cried, my voice rising. Tell me the truth, Martha, all of it. She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, the patio door slid open. Ethan stood there, his face a mix of fear and resignation. No, Mom, he said quietly. I'll tell her. It's time Sarah knew everything. As I looked between them, I realized that whatever Ethan was about to say would change my life forever, and there was no going back. I stormed into my parents' house, my emotions a volatile mix of anger and desperation. The confrontation with Ethan and his parents had left me reeling, and I needed answers. Real answers from the people who had raised me. Mom? Dad? I called out, my voice echoing through the familiar halls. My mother appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Sarah? What's wrong, honey? You look upset. Dad emerged from his study, his brow furrowed with concern. Is everything all right? I laughed bitterly. No, everything is not all right. I need to talk to you both, now. We gathered in the living room, the tension palpable. I paced back and forth, trying to gather my thoughts. Sarah, you're scaring us, Mom said softly. What's going on? I took a deep breath, then plunged in. I know about Ethan and Lisa. I know about the baby. The color drained from both their faces. Dad's hand tightened on the armrest of his chair. What are you talking about? Mom stammered. Don't, I snapped. Don't lie to me. Not anymore. I found a photo of them together with a baby at some cabin. And Ethan's parents. They know something, too. I want the truth. All of it. My parents exchanged a look that spoke volumes. Dad sighed heavily, suddenly looking much older than his years. Sarah, honey, he began, it's complicated. Stop saying that, I shouted, my composure finally breaking. Everyone keeps saying it's complicated, but no one will tell me what's really going on. Mom reached out to me, but I jerked away. We were trying to protect you, she said, her voice trembling. Protect me? I scoffed. By lying to me for years? By letting me marry a man who had a child with my own sister? Dad stood up, his face grave. It wasn't like that, Sarah. At least she was in trouble. Ethan was trying to help. Help? I repeated incredulously. By fathering her child? No, Mom interjected. Ethan isn't the father. He never was. The room spun around me. What? Dad took a deep breath. Lisa got mixed up with some bad people. She was young, naive. When she found out she was pregnant, she was scared. Ethan? He offered to help her hide until the baby was born. But the photo, I whispered, was taken the day Lisa gave the baby up for adoption, Mom finished. Ethan was there for moral support. I sank onto the couch, my mind reeling. Why didn't anyone tell me? Lisa made us promise, Dad said. She was ashamed, Sarah, and we thought it was better if you didn't know. We never imagined it would come out like this. The pieces were falling into place, but something still didn't add up. But why keep it a secret all these years? Why did Ethan never tell me? My parents exchanged another loaded glance. Mom's voice was barely above a whisper when she spoke, because the people Lisa was involved with, they're dangerous, Sarah. We were all trying to keep you safe. A chill ran down my spine. Safe from what? Before they could answer, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Stay away from Lisa, for your own good. I showed the message to my parents, watching the color drain from their faces once again. Oh, God, Mom breathed. They've found her. Dad's voice was urgent. Sarah, listen to me. You need to leave town. Now. Don't tell anyone where you're going. Not even Ethan. But, no buts, he insisted. We'll explain everything later, I promise. But right now, you need to go. Please, Sarah. Trust us. As I looked into their frightened eyes, I realized I had a choice to make. Stay and demand more answers, or run from a danger I didn't fully understand. With shaking hands, I grabbed my keys. I'll call you when I'm safe, I promised. As I rushed out the door, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. The truth I'd sought had only led to more questions, and now it seemed it had put my very life in danger. I paced the living room, my nerves frayed to the breaking point. It had been 3 days since I'd fled my parents' house, and Ethan still hadn't come home. My calls went straight to voicemail, my texts unanswered. The silence was deafening. A knock at the door made me jump. Heart racing, I approached cautiously, peering through the peephole. It was Martha, Ethan's mother. I opened the door, my voice trembling. Martha, what are you doing here? Her eyes were red-rimmed, her usually immaculate appearance disheveled. Sarah, dear, I need to talk to you about Ethan. A chill ran down my spine. Come in, I said, stepping aside. Martha sank onto the couch, her hands twisting in her lap. Have you heard from him? I shook my head. Nothing. I was hoping you had. She closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek. He's gone, Sarah. He left a note. Oh, God, I can't believe this is happening again. Again? I repeated, my mind reeling. What do you mean, again? Martha, what's going on? She pulled a crumpled piece of paper from her purse, handing it to me with shaking hands. Read it, please. I unfolded the note, recognizing Ethan's handwriting immediately. Mom, Dad, I'm sorry. They found her. I have to go. Keep Sarah safe. I love you all. The room spun around me. Who found who? Martha, please. I need to understand what's happening. Martha's voice was barely above a whisper. It's happening all over again, just like with Lisa. Lisa? I said, my voice rising. What does she have to do with this? Martha looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and resignation. Everything, Sarah. Lisa is at the center of it all. She took a deep breath, then began to speak. Years ago, before you and Ethan were married, Lisa got involved with some very dangerous people. A criminal organization. She thought she was in love, but she was being used. I sank into a chair, my legs no longer able to support me. Go on, I whispered. When she realized she was pregnant, she came to Ethan for help. He hid her at the cabin, helped her give the baby up for adoption. We thought it was over, that she was safe, but now they've found her, I finished, the pieces finally falling into place. Martha nodded. And Ethan? Oh, Sarah, he's always felt responsible. He couldn't save her then, but now. He's gone after her, I said, the realization hitting me like a punch to the gut. Just then, my phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. Time's up. Choose a side. I showed it to Martha, watching the color drain from her face. Oh, God, she whispered. Sarah, you need to leave. Now, it's not safe here anymore. But as I stared at the message, something inside me snapped. I was tired of running, tired of being kept in the dark. No, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. I'm not going anywhere. It's time I faced this head on. Martha's eyes widened. Sarah, you don't understand. These people, they're dangerous. I don't care, I interrupted. Ethan's out there, risking his life for my sister. I can't just sit here and do nothing. I stood up, a plan already forming in my mind. I'm going to find them, Martha, both of them, and I'm going to end this once and for all. Martha reached for me, her voice pleading. Sarah, please think about what you're saying. You could be killed. But my mind was made up. As I looked at Martha's terrified face, I knew I was crossing a line from which there was no return. I'd rather die fighting than live in fear, I said, my voice steady. It's time to finish what Lisa started all those years ago. As I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Whatever lay ahead, whatever dangers I might face, I knew one thing for certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. I stood in Ethan's favorite bar, surrounded by his friends, their accusing glares burning into me. I'd come here hoping for answers, but all I found was hostility. What did you do to him, Sarah? Jake, Ethan's best friend, demanded. He was fine until that night he came home from your parents' place. I flinched, remembering the argument that had preceded Ethan's disappearance. I didn't do anything. I'm trying to find him, just like you are. Bull, Sarah, another friend, spat. Ethan would never just leave, not unless you pushed him away. The unfairness of it all made my blood boil. You don't know anything about what's going on, I snapped. None of you do. Jake stepped closer, his voice low and threatening. Then enlighten us, Sarah. What exactly is going on? For a moment, I considered telling them everything about Lisa, the baby, the dangerous people from her past. But the memory of that threatening text message stopped me. I couldn't risk putting anyone else in danger. I can't, I said, my voice breaking. I'm sorry, but I can't explain. The group's hostility seemed to intensify. I felt cornered, outnumbered. Maybe you should just go, Sarah said coldly. We'll find Ethan ourselves. As I turned to leave, defeated, my phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. Tick-tock, Sarah. Time's running out for Ethan and Lisa. My heart raced. I had to get out of here, had to keep searching. But as I reached for the door, a hand grabbed my arm. What's that? Jake demanded, having seen the message over my shoulder. Who's threatening you? And what does Lisa have to do with this? Before I could answer, the bar's TV caught my attention. A breaking news banner flashed across the screen. Local businessman Ethan Roberts and sister-in-law Lisa Carter missing. Foul play suspected. The room fell silent as everyone turned to watch. My legs gave out, and I sank onto a bar stool, my world crumbling around me. The reporter's voice seemed to come from far away. Sources say Roberts and Carter were last seen entering an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. Police are treating their disappearance as suspicious. Sarah, Jake's voice was gentler now, tinged with concern. What the hell is going on? I opened my mouth to respond, but my phone buzzed again. This time it was Martha calling. Sarah, she sobbed as soon as I answered. They've taken Lyle. They left a note. They want you to come alone to the warehouse. Oh, God, Sarah, what are we going to do? The room spun around me. Ethan, Lisa, and now Lyle, all in danger because of me. Because I'd started asking questions, because I'd refused to let sleeping dogs lie. I'll handle it, Martha, I heard myself say, my voice sounding strangely calm. Just stay where you are. I'll bring them all home. As I hung up, I realized Ethan's friends were staring at me, their expressions a mix of confusion and growing understanding. Sarah, Jake said slowly, whatever's happening, you don't have to face it alone. Let us help. For a moment, I was tempted. But then I remembered the threats, the danger. I couldn't risk anyone else's life. I'm sorry, I said, standing up. But this is something I have to do on my own. As I walked out of the bar, my heart pounding and my mind racing, I knew I was walking into a trap. But I had no choice. Ethan, Lisa, Lyle, their lives were in my hands now. With each step towards my car, towards the warehouse where my fate awaited, I felt a strange mix of terror and determination. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing for certain. By the end of this night, everything would change. And I had to be ready for whatever came my way. The church was packed for Lyle's funeral. I sat in the front pew, numb with grief and exhaustion. The past week had been a blur of police interviews, sleepless nights, and unanswered questions. Martha sat beside me, her hand clutching mine, both of us lost in our sorrow. As the minister began his eulogy, a commotion at the back of the church caught my attention. I turned and my heart stopped. There, standing in the doorway, was Ethan, and beside him, looking pale and shaken, was Lisa. A collective gasp rippled through the congregation. Martha's grip on my hand tightened painfully. Sarah, she whispered, her voice trembling. What's happening? I couldn't answer. I was frozen, watching as Ethan and Lisa made their way down the aisle. Ethan's eyes were fixed on me, a mixture of guilt and determination in his gaze. They reached the front, and Ethan spoke, his voice carrying through the stunned silence. I'm sorry for interrupting, but there's something we need to say, something that can't wait any longer. The minister stepped aside, clearly at a loss. I stood up, my legs shaking. Ethan, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Where have you been? What's going on? He took a deep breath, glancing at Lisa before turning back to me. Sarah? We've been hiding from the people who were after Lisa, the ones who killed Lyle. A murmur ran through the church. I felt like I was in a nightmare, unable to wake up. But that's not all, Lisa chimed in, her voice small and frightened. Ethan and we've been. No, I said, shaking my head. Don't say it. Please, don't say it. But Ethan pressed on, his words like daggers to my heart. We've been having an affair, Sarah. It started when I went to help Lisa hide. I'm so sorry. We never meant for it to happen, but the world tilted around me. I heard Martha's shocked gasp, felt the weight of everyone's stares. But all I could focus on was the crushing pain in my chest. How could you? I whispered, tears streaming down my face. After everything we've been through, how could you do this? Ethan reached for me, but I jerked away. Sarah, please. You have to understand. We were scared. We thought we were going to die. It just happened. Lisa stepped forward, her eyes pleading. Sarah, I know you must hate me, but we need your help. The people who killed Lyle, they're still after us. We don't know who else to turn to. I laughed bitterly, the sound echoing through the church. You betray me in the worst possible way, and now you want my help. How dare you? But even as the words left my mouth, I knew I couldn't turn them away. Not with killers on their trail. Not with Lyle's death still unsolved. Martha stood up, her voice shaking with anger. Get out, both of you. How dare you come here to Lyle's funeral with this betrayal? Ethan's face crumpled. Mom, please. We didn't know where else to go. Suddenly, the church doors burst open. 2 men in dark suits strode in, their hands reaching inside their jackets. "There they are," one shouted. "Get them!" Chaos erupted. People screamed, scrambling for cover. Ethan grabbed Lisa's hand, pulling her towards a side exit. "Sarah," he called over his shoulder. "Please, help us." As gunshots rang out, shattering the stained glass windows, I found myself faced with an impossible choice. Stay and let Ethan and Lisa fend for themselves, or risk everything to help the 2 people who had hurt me the most. In that moment, with bullets flying and my world crumbling around me, I made a decision that would change everything. And as I ran after Ethan and Lisa, ducking to avoid the gunfire, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. I stood in the lawyer's office, my hands clenched at my sides, as Ethan and Lisa argued vehemently about their supposed rights to the family assets. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of revelations and betrayals, but nothing could have prepared me for this final insult. "You can't do this, Sarah," Ethan shouted, his face red with anger. "I'm Lyle's son. I have a right to my inheritance." Lisa nodded vigorously. "And as Ethan's partner, I should have a claim too. It's only fair." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Fair? You want to talk about fair? After everything you've done?" The lawyer, Mr. Thompson, cleared his throat. "If I may interject, the situation is quite clear legally. Mrs. Roberts, Sarah, is now legally Martha's adopted daughter. As such, she has full rights to the estate, as per Mrs. Roberts' will." Ethan's jaw dropped. "What? When did this happen?" I smiled sadly. "While you were off playing house with my sister, Ethan, Martha and I grew closer. She saw how much I cared for her, how I stood by her side through everything. She made her choice." Lisa lunged forward, her eyes wild. "You manipulated her. You turned her against us." "No, Lisa," I said firmly. "You did that all on your own. Both of you did." Mr. Thompson produced a document. "I have here Mrs. Roberts' last will and testament. It clearly states that all assets are to be transferred to her daughter, Sarah. There's no ambiguity." Ethan slumped in his chair, the fight seeming to drain out of him. "Sarah, please. We can work this out. We're family." I felt a surge of strength I didn't know I possessed. "No, Ethan. We were family. You and Lisa destroyed that when you betrayed me, when you lied, when you put your own selfish desires above everything else." "What about forgiveness?" Lisa pleaded. "Isn't that what family does?" I turned to her, my voice steady. "Forgiveness is earned, Lisa, and neither of you has done anything to deserve it." Just then, the office door opened and Adam walked in. My rock, my support through this entire ordeal. He came to stand beside me, his hand on my shoulder. "Is everything okay here?" he asked, his eyes never leaving Ethan and Lisa. I nodded, drawing strength from his presence. "Yes, we're just wrapping up." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Who's this?" "This is Adam," I said, my voice filled with pride. "My husband." The shock on their faces was almost comical. Lisa sputtered. "Husband? But how? When?" "While you two were busy trying to tear this family apart," Adam said calmly, "Sarah and I were building something new, something stronger." I turned to Mr. Thompson. "I believe we're done here. Please ensure that all the paperwork is in order." As we turned to leave, Ethan made one last desperate attempt. "Sarah, please, we can start over. Give us another chance." I paused at the door, looking back at the 2 people who had once meant everything to me. "No, Ethan, this is the end. I'm moving forward with my life, with people who truly love and respect me. I hope someday you both understand the damage you've caused." With that, Adam and I walked out, leaving Ethan and Lisa behind, not just in the office, but in my life. As we stepped into the sunlight, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The pain wasn't gone, not completely, but for the first time in months, I felt hope. "Are you okay?" Adam asked gently. I smiled up at him, tears in my eyes. "I will be. We will be." As we walked hand in hand towards our future, I realized that sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the one you're born into. And in that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I had the strength to face them. The old Sarah, naive, trusting, easily manipulated, was gone. In her place stood a woman who had weathered the storm and emerged stronger, wiser, and ready to embrace the life she deserved. And as I looked towards the horizon, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The journey had been painful, but it had led me exactly where I needed to be. The sound of shattering glass jolted me from my concentration. I'd been grading papers at the dining room table, enjoying a rare moment of peace in my usually chaotic life. But of course that couldn't last. "Oops, sorry, Leah," Bella's shrill voice called from the kitchen. "I'll clean it up later." I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to take a deep breath before responding. "It's fine, Bella. I'll take care of it." As I grabbed the broom and dustpan, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the hallway mirror. Dark circles under my eyes, hair pulled back in a messy bun, I barely recognized myself. At 35, I should be thriving in my career as an assistant professor, not playing maid to my irresponsible sister-in-law. The front door opened and Sam trudged in, looking exhausted. "Hey, honey," he mumbled, barely meeting my eyes. "Sam, we need to talk," I said, setting aside the broom. "Why are Bella's things all over our guest room?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, she's going through a rough patch. Lost her job again. I told her she could crash here for a few days." "A few days?" I echoed, my voice rising. "Sam, her stuff is everywhere. It looks like she's moving in." Before he could respond, Bella sauntered into the room, still in her pajamas despite it being nearly noon. "Oh, hey, big bro. Thanks again for letting me stay. You're a lifesaver." I watched in disbelief as she planted a kiss on Sam's cheek, then flopped onto our couch, reaching for the TV remote. "Bella," I said, trying to keep my voice level, "I thought you were looking for a new job today." She waved a hand dismissively. "Oh, you know how it is. The market's tough right now. I'll get to it tomorrow." I turned to Sam, silently pleading for backup, but he just shrugged helplessly. "I'm heading to bed," he mumbled. "Early shift tomorrow." As he disappeared upstairs, I felt a familiar knot of tension forming in my stomach. Something was off with Sam lately, beyond just the stress of his job. We'd barely spoken in weeks, and now this situation with Bella. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother-in-law, Christine. "Heard Bella's staying with you. So kind of you to help out. Roger and I are thrilled you're all getting along so well." I nearly laughed out loud. Of course, Christine and Roger were thrilled. It meant they didn't have to deal with their youngest daughter's latest crisis. "Leah?" Bella's voice interrupted my thoughts. "Do you guys have any snacks? I'm starving." I closed my eyes, counting to 10 before responding. "There's fruit in the fridge, Bella. Help yourself." She made a face. "Ugh, no junk food? How do you live like this?" As I watched her rummage through our kitchen, leaving a trail of mess in her wake, I felt something inside me snap. "That's it," I muttered, grabbing my keys and heading for the door. "Where are you going?" Bella called after me. "Out," I replied curtly. "Don't wait up." I slammed the door behind me, relishing the momentary silence. As I got into my car, I realized I had no idea where I was going. All I knew was that I couldn't spend another minute in that house. My phone buzzed again, another text from Christine. "By the way, Olivia mentioned she might need a place to stay for a while, too. You have room for one more, right?" I stared at the message in disbelief. This couldn't be happening. How had my life spiraled so far out of control? As I pulled out of the driveway, I made a silent vow to myself. Something had to change, and soon. I just had to figure out what and how. I returned home late that night, hoping to find some peace. Instead, I walked into a disaster zone. Bella's clothes were strewn across the living room, and the kitchen sink overflowed with dirty dishes. The scent of stale pizza hung in the air. "Sam?" I called out, my voice tight with frustration. "We need to talk. Now!" He emerged from our bedroom, looking sheepish. "Hey, Leah, I was just about to clean up." "Save it," I snapped. "This isn't about the mess. It's about Bella. She can't stay here, Sam. It's not working." His face hardened. "She's my sister, Leah. Where's she supposed to go?" "I don't know, but this isn't sustainable. Our house isn't a halfway home for unemployed relatives." Sam's eyes flashed with anger. "That's rich coming from you. At least I'm trying to help my family." "What's that supposed to mean?" He hesitated, then blurted out, "I lost my job, okay? 2 weeks ago. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you." The room spun. I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself. "You what? How could you keep this from me?" "I was ashamed," he mumbled. "I thought I could find something else quickly, but..." "But what? You decided to invite your jobless sister to live with us instead?" "She understands what I'm going through," Sam shouted. "Unlike you, always wrapped up in your work, your students, your precious career." The words stung like a slap. "I've been supporting us, Sam, paying the bills, keeping this household running, and this is how you repay me?" Before he could respond, Bella stumbled in, clearly tipsy. "Whoa, what's with all the yelling?" Can't a girl get some beauty sleep around here? I rounded on her. Bella, this isn't working. You need to find somewhere else to stay. Her lower lip trembled. But Sam said I could stay as long as I needed, right, Sam? I turned to my husband, silently daring him to side with her. To my shock, he nodded. Yeah, Bells, you're welcome here. Unbelievable, I muttered. So that's it? I don't get a say in my own home? Sam's expression softened. Leah, please, we're all going through tough times. Can't we just support each other? I laughed bitterly. Support? Is that what you call lying to me for weeks? Inviting your sister to move in without even discussing it? Bella piped up. Hey, I can hear you. You know, if you don't want me here, just say so. I have been saying so. I exploded. But neither of you seems to care what I think or feel. Sam reached for me, but I jerked away. Don't. Just don't. I can't deal with this right now. I stormed upstairs, slamming our bedroom door behind me. As I collapsed onto the bed, my phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. Hey sis, everything okay? Sam mentioned you might need some help around the house. I could come stay for a while if you need me. I stared at the message in disbelief. Was this some kind of sick joke? Had Sam invited his entire family to move in without telling me? Downstairs, I could hear Sam and Bella talking in hushed voices. My husband and his sister conspiring against me in my own home. The betrayal cut deep. I typed out a quick response to Olivia. Thanks, but I think we have enough house guests at the moment. Talk soon. As I hit send, a cold determination settled over me. This couldn't continue. Something had to give, and I was done being the only one making sacrifices. Tomorrow, I decided, I would start looking for my own place. If Sam and Bella wanted to play house, they could do it without me. It was time to take back control of my life, even if it meant walking away from everything I thought I knew. With that resolution, I drifted into an uneasy sleep, dreaming of empty houses and endless arguments, wondering how my life had unraveled so quickly. The shrill ring of my phone jolted me awake. I fumbled for it, squinting at the screen. Christine's name flashed and my stomach dropped. Just what I needed. Another lecture from my mother-in-law. Hello, I answered, my voice still thick with sleep. Leah, dear, I hope I didn't wake you. Christine's saccharine tone grated on my nerves. I just wanted to check in. How are things with Bella? I bit back a sarcastic retort. Things are tense, Christine. I don't think this arrangement is working out. Oh, nonsense, she chirped. I'm sure you're all getting along splendidly. Bella's always been such a joy to have around. I nearly choked. A joy? Christine, she's turned our house upside down. She doesn't clean, doesn't look for work, and Sam. Now, Leah, Christine interrupted, her voice taking on a steely edge. I'm sure you're exaggerating. Bella's going through a rough patch. As family, we need to support her. And what about supporting me? I snapped. This is my home, too, and I didn't agree to any of this. There was a pause. Then Christine spoke again, her tone dripping with disappointment. I expected better from you, Leah. You've always been so rigid. Perhaps this is an opportunity for you to learn some flexibility. The conversation devolved from there, with Christine lecturing me on family loyalty and the importance of sacrifice. By the time I hung up, my blood was boiling. I stormed downstairs, ready to confront Sam and Bella, only to find the living room in even worse shape than before. Bella lounged on the couch, still in her pajamas, scrolling through her phone. Oh, hey, Leah, she said without looking up. We're out of milk. Could you pick some up? Something inside me snapped. No, Bella, I will not pick up milk. This isn't a hotel, and I'm not your maid. She finally glanced up, her eyes wide with feigned innocence. Geez, what's your problem? I was just asking. My problem, I seethed, is that you've been here for days, contributing nothing but mess and chaos. When are you planning to look for a job, or at least clean up after yourself? Bella's face crumpled. You don't understand. It's hard out there. I'm trying, but... But what? I interrupted. You seem to have plenty of energy for going out drinking and watching TV all day. Leave her alone, Leah. Sam's voice came from behind me. I whirled to face him, fury building. Of course you're taking her side, I spat. God forbid either of you take any responsibility. Sam's face hardened. That's not fair. We're both going through a tough time. And I'm not, I shot back. I'm the only one holding things together while you two play house. The argument escalated, voices rising until we were all shouting over each other. Suddenly, a crash from the kitchen silenced us. We rushed in to find Bella standing amidst shattered glass, my grandmother's antique vase in pieces at her feet. I was just trying to clean up, she whimpered. I stared at the broken shards, feeling something break inside me as well. Without a word, I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" Sam called after me. "Anywhere but here," I replied, my voice cold. "I can't do this anymore." As I pulled out of the driveway, my phone buzzed again. A text from Roger, my father-in-law. "Heard you're having some trouble at home. Remember, family comes first. Don't let your career get in the way of what really matters." I tossed the phone aside, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. They were all against me. Sam, Bella, Christine, Roger. How had I become the villain in my own life? As I drove aimlessly, one thought crystallized in my mind. Something had to change, and if no one else was willing to make that change, it would have to be me. I returned home late that evening, exhausted and emotionally drained. The house was quiet, but the tension in the air was palpable. As I stepped into the living room, I froze. Bella had redecorated, my carefully chosen furnishings pushed aside to make room for her garish taste. "What the hell is this?" I muttered, my fists clenching at my sides. "Oh, hey, Leah!" Bella chirped, emerging from the kitchen. I thought I'd spruce the place up a bit. It was so boring before. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to remain calm. "Bella, we need to talk. This can't continue. You need to start looking for a job and your own place to live." She rolled her eyes. "Geez, you sound just like Mom and Dad. Can't you just chill?" "No, I can't chill," I snapped. "This is my home, and you're treating it like a frat house. Where's Sam?" As if on cue, Sam trudged down the stairs looking sheepish. "Hey, honey, I see you've noticed the changes." I rounded on him. "You let her do this without even asking me?" He shrugged helplessly. "I thought it might cheer you up. You've been so stressed lately." "Stressed?" I laughed bitterly. I wonder why. Maybe because my husband lost his job and didn't tell me, then invited his unemployed sister to live with us indefinitely? Bella piped up. "Hey, I'm right here, you know." "Trust me, I'm aware," I retorted. "Look, I'm setting some ground rules. Starting tomorrow, you both need to be actively job hunting, and Bella, you need to contribute to household chores and expenses." They exchanged glances, and I saw something pass between them that made my blood run cold. "Actually," Sam began hesitantly, "I've been thinking maybe we could invite Olivia to stay for a while, too. You know, to help with expenses." I stared at him, dumbfounded. "Are you serious? You want to invite your other sister to live here, too?" "Well, yeah," Bella chimed in. "Olivia's got a great job. She could totally help out with the bills and stuff." The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. They weren't just taking advantage of my hospitality. They were planning to turn our home into some kind of family commune, with me footing the bill. "Absolutely not," I said firmly. "This is not up for discussion. In fact, Bella, I want you out by the end of the week." Sam's face hardened. "You can't just kick her out, Leah. She's family." "And what am I?" I shot back. "Because lately it feels like I'm just a meal ticket and a maid service." The argument escalated quickly, voices rising until we were all shouting over each other. Suddenly my phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. "Hey sis, just booked my flight. Can't wait to see you all next week." I stared at the message in disbelief, then looked up at Sam and Bella's guilty faces. "You already invited her," I said, my voice dangerously quiet, without even talking to me. Sam reached for me, but I jerked away. "Leah, please, we're just trying to keep the family together." "Family?" I laughed bitterly. "That what you call this? Because from where I'm standing it looks a lot like betrayal." I stormed upstairs, my mind racing. This was it, the final straw. I couldn't live like this anymore, constantly undermined and disrespected in my own home. As I threw some clothes into a suitcase, I made a decision. It was time to put myself first for once. I'd stay with a colleague for a few days, clear my head, and figure out my next move. But one thing was certain. I wouldn't be coming back to this chaos. It was time to reclaim my life, even if it meant leaving behind everything I thought I knew. With a heavy heart but a sense of resolve, I zipped up my suitcase and headed for the door, ignoring Sam and Bella's protests. As I drove away, I felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in months, I felt like I was taking control of my own destiny. I sat in my colleague's guest room, staring at my phone. Olivia's number glared back at me, daring me to make the call. With a deep breath, I hit dial. Leah? Olivia's voice was warm, but cautious. Is everything okay? I've been trying to reach Sam, but he's not answering. I laughed bitterly. Oh, everything's just peachy. Did you know about their little plan? Plan? What are you talking about? I filled her in on the chaos of the past few weeks. Bella moving in, Sam's job loss, and now their scheme to have Olivia join the fray. Oh my God. Olivia gasped. Leah, I had no idea. Sam just said you guys could use some help with expenses. I never meant to intrude. Well, that makes one of you, I muttered. There was a pause, then Olivia spoke again, her voice firm. I'm canceling my flight. This is ridiculous. Have you talked to Mom and Dad about this? I scoffed. Oh, I've talked to them all right. They think I'm being selfish for not wanting to support the entire family. That's absurd, Olivia said. Look, I'm coming into town next week for a conference. Why don't we meet up and figure this out? As we made plans, I felt a glimmer of hope. At least one person in this family seemed to have their head on straight. After hanging up, I checked my messages. 5 missed calls from Sam, 3 from Bella, and a scathing text from Christine. Leah, how could you abandon your family like this? I thought we raised you better. Anger bubbled up inside me. Before I could stop myself, I fired back a response. You didn't raise me at all, Christine. I'm Sam's wife, not your daughter, and right now, I'm not sure I want to be either. Seconds after hitting send, my phone rang. It was Roger. Leah, he began, his voice stern, I think you owe your mother-in-law an apology. I exploded. An apology? Are you kidding me? Your children have taken over my home, disrespected me at every turn, and you think I'm the one who needs to apologize? Now? Listen here. Roger started, but I cut him off. No, you listen. I'm done being the family doormat. If Sam and Bella want to play house, they can do it without me, and you and Christine can stop pretending you have any say in my life. I hung up, my hands shaking. Part of me felt liberated, but another part was terrified. What had I just done? My phone buzzed again, a text from Sam. Leah, please come home. We need to talk. I stared at the message, torn. Part of me wanted to rush back, to try and salvage what was left of my marriage. But a stronger part knew that going back now would just mean falling into the same old patterns. As I debated, another text came through, this time from Bella. Hey sis, no hard feelings about earlier, right? BW, I borrowed your car to go job hunting. Hope that's cool. That was the final straw. I'd left my car at home when I stormed out, and now Bella was joyriding in it, probably with no intention of actually looking for work. In that moment, everything became crystal clear. I couldn't go back. Not now, maybe not ever. It was time to start putting myself first. With shaking hands, I typed out a response to Sam. I'm sorry, but I can't come home right now. I need some time to think. Please tell Bella to return my car immediately, or I'll report it stolen. As I hit send, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in months, I was standing up for myself. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I was done being a supporting character in my own life story. It was time to take the lead. I stood on the doorstep of my own home, feeling like a stranger. It had been a week since I'd left, and Olivia's arrival for her conference had finally given me the courage to return. Taking a deep breath, I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The chaos that greeted me was beyond anything I'd imagined. Clothes, empty takeout containers, and beer bottles littered every surface. The air was thick with the stench of stale alcohol and unwashed bodies. Hello? I called out, my voice echoing in the eerie silence. Olivia appeared from the kitchen, her face a mask of shock and disgust. Leah, thank God you're here. I don't even know what to say. Before I could respond, Bella stumbled down the stairs, clearly hungover. Oh, hey sis, she slurred. Didn't expect to see you back so soon. My blood boiled. Where's Sam? I demanded. As if on cue, my husband emerged from our bedroom, looking disheveled and reeking of booze. Leah? He mumbled, rubbing his eyes. What are you doing here? What am I doing here? I repeated incredulously. This is my house, Sam. The better question is, what the hell have you been doing? Olivia stepped in, her voice tight with anger. They've been having a nonstop party, Leah. I got here yesterday, and it's been like this the whole time. I tried to talk some sense into them, but... Sam had the decency to look ashamed. Look, we just got a little carried away. Things have been tough, you know? Tough? I exploded. You think this is tough? Try working your ass off to support a family that doesn't appreciate you, only to come home and find it turned into a frat house. Bella piped up. Hey, we've been looking for jobs. Well, kind of. It's not our fault the market sucks. I rounded on her. And my car? Where is it, Bella? She paled. Oh, about that. There might have been a tiny accident. The room spun. I gripped the wall for support, trying to process everything. That's when I noticed something on the coffee table. Job applications, but not for the positions I'd expected. Sam, I said slowly, picking up the papers. What are these? He shifted uncomfortably. Well, I've been thinking, maybe it's time for a change. Those are applications for jobs overseas. You know, a fresh start for both of us. I stared at him, dumbfounded. Both of us? You made this decision without even talking to me? And what about my career, my students? I just thought. He trailed off, unable to meet my eyes. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. You didn't lose your job, did you? I said, my voice dangerously quiet. You quit, you were bored, so you threw away our stability, our future, without even discussing it with me. The silence that followed was deafening. Sam's guilty expression confirmed my suspicions. Olivia stepped forward, her face a mix of sympathy and disgust. Leah, I had no idea things had gotten this bad. I'm so sorry. I barely heard her. My world was crumbling around me, years of trust and partnership dissolving in an instant. Get out, I whispered, then louder. All of you, get out of my house. Now. Bella started to protest, but Olivia silenced her with a look. Come on, she said, grabbing both Bella and Sam by the arm. We're leaving. As they shuffled out, Sam turned back. Leah, please, we can work this out. I met his gaze, seeing a stranger where my husband used to be. No, Sam, we can't. This isn't just about the mess or Bella or even the job. You've betrayed my trust in every possible way. We're done. The door closed behind them, leaving me alone in the wreckage of my marriage. As the gravity of the situation hit me, I sank to the floor, tears streaming down my face. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my relationship, had been a lie. But amidst the pain and betrayal, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was the push I needed to finally start living life on my own terms. I stood in the wreckage of my living room, surrounded by the debris of my shattered marriage. The silence was deafening after the chaos of the past few weeks. My phone buzzed incessantly, messages from Sam, Bella, Christine, and Roger, all demanding explanations, apologies, reconciliation. I ignored them all. With trembling hands, I dialed my lawyer's number. Janet, it's Leah. I need to file for divorce. Today. As I hung up, a knock at the door startled me. I opened it to find Olivia, her face etched with concern. Leah, I'm so sorry, she began, but I cut her off. Don't. Just don't. I can't handle any more apologies right now. She nodded, understanding. I'm not here to apologize. I'm here to help. What do you need? I laughed bitterly. A time machine? A new family? A life that isn't falling apart? Olivia stepped inside, surveying the mess. Let's start with something more manageable. How about we clean this place up? As we worked, Olivia filled me in on what had happened after they left. Sam and Bella were staying with their parents, all of them in denial about the gravity of the situation. They think you'll cool off and come around, Olivia said, shaking her head. I tried to tell them this was different, but they won't listen. My phone rang again. Sam? This time I answered. Leah, please, he begged. We can work this out. I'll get my old job back. I'll make Bella move out. Just come home. I am home, Sam, I replied, my voice steady. You're the one who needs to leave. I've called a lawyer. It's over. There was a long pause. You don't mean that, he finally said. What about our life together? Our plans? What plans? I snapped. The ones you made without me? The job applications for positions halfway across the world? Or maybe you mean your plans to turn our home into a flophouse for your irresponsible sister? That's not fair, Sam protested. We've been through a lot. No, Sam, I've been through a lot. You've been having a midlife crisis at my expense. I'm done. I hung up, my hands shaking. Olivia placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing, she said softly. Before I could respond, there was a commotion outside. We rushed to the window to see Sam's car screeching into the driveway, Bella in the passenger seat. Oh no, Olivia muttered. This isn't good. Sam burst through the door, his eyes wild. Leah, you can't do this. We can fix this. Bella stumbled in behind him, clearly drunk. Yeah, sis, don't be such a buzzkill. We were just having some fun. I felt something snap inside me. Years of suppressed anger and resentment bubbled to the surface. "Fun," I shouted. "You call destroying my home, my marriage, my life fun? Get out, both of you, get out now before I call the police." Sam reached for me, but Olivia stepped between us. She said, "Leave, Sam. Now." For a moment I thought he might argue, but then his shoulders slumped in defeat. "Come on, Bella," he muttered. "Let's go." As they shuffled out, Bella turned back, her face twisted with spite. "You know what, Leah? You were always too uptight. Sam's better off without you." The door slammed behind them, leaving Olivia and me in stunned silence. "I can't believe this is happening," I whispered, sinking to the floor. Olivia sat beside me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "I know it doesn't feel like it now, but you're going to be okay. You're strong, Leah. Stronger than all of them put together." As I sat there, surrounded by the ruins of my old life, I felt a strange mix of grief and relief wash over me. Everything I thought I knew had crumbled, but from the ashes I could see the faint glimmer of a new beginning. "You're right," I said, wiping away tears I hadn't realized I'd shed. "I am strong, and it's time I started living for myself." 1 month after the explosive confrontation, I stood in my newly redecorated living room, breathing in the scent of fresh paint and new beginnings. The divorce papers lay signed on the coffee table, a bittersweet symbol of my newfound freedom. A gentle whine drew my attention to Rosie, my rescue dog, who patted over for a scratch behind the ears. "Good girl," I murmured, grateful for her unconditional love. The doorbell rang and I tensed, half expecting another drama-filled encounter. But it was Olivia, her face a mix of determination and concern. "Hey, sis," she said, stepping inside. "How are you holding up?" I managed a small smile. "Better than I expected, actually. It's peaceful." Olivia nodded, then took a deep breath. "Leah, there's something you should know. I went to see Sam and Bella at Mom and Dad's place yesterday." My heart raced. "And?" "It was a disaster," she sighed. "Bella's drinking has gotten worse, and Sam, he's a mess. He kept talking about winning you back, making grand plans that made no sense." I closed my eyes, fighting a wave of conflicting emotions. "That's not my problem anymore, Olivia." "I know," she said quickly, "and I'm not here to guilt you. I finally told them all exactly what I thought of their behavior, Mom and Dad included." My eyes snapped open. "You did what?" Olivia's face hardened. "I told them they were selfish, irresponsible, and that they'd driven away the best person in this family. I said if they didn't get their act together, they'd lose me too." I stared at her, speechless. Olivia had always been the peacekeeper, avoiding confrontation at all costs. "You didn't have to do that," I whispered. She grabbed my hand. "Yes, I did. Leah, I'm so sorry I didn't stand up for you sooner. Can you forgive me?" Tears welled up in my eyes as I pulled her into a hug. "There's nothing to forgive. You're here now, and that means everything." As we embraced, my phone buzzed. A text from Sam. "I understand now. I'm sorry for everything. I hope one day you can forgive me." I showed it to Olivia, who raised an eyebrow. "Are you going to respond?" I thought for a moment, then typed, "I forgive you, Sam. Not for you, but for me. I hope you find peace and learn from this. Goodbye." As I hit send, a weight I didn't know I'd been carrying lifted from my shoulders. I turned to Olivia, suddenly feeling lighter than I had in years. "You know what? I think it's time for a celebration," I declared. Olivia grinned. "What did you have in mind?" An hour later, we sat on my back porch, sipping wine and watching the sunset. Rosie lounged at our feet, content in the peaceful atmosphere. "To new beginnings," Olivia toasted, raising her glass. "And to family," I added, "the ones we choose." As we clinked glasses, I reflected on the tumultuous journey that had brought me here. The pain, the betrayal, the heartache. It had all led to this moment of clarity and self-discovery. I realized that in losing the family I thought I needed, I'd found the strength I never knew I had. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I was excited about the future. "You know," I said to Olivia, "I think I'm going to apply for that department head position at the university, the one I always thought was out of my reach." Olivia beamed. "That's fantastic. You'll be amazing." As the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in brilliant hues, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. The chaos of the past few months had forged me into someone stronger, someone unafraid to stand up for herself and pursue her dreams. I looked at Olivia, my faithful ally, and down at Rosie, my loyal companion. This, I realized, was what true family looked like. Not the toxic relationships I'd left behind, but the supportive, loving connections I'd chosen for myself. "Here's to the next chapter," I said softly, more to myself than anyone else. And as the stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them, on my own terms, with my chosen family by my side. I found my father-in-law's body on a Tuesday afternoon. The house was eerily quiet as I stepped inside, my arms laden with groceries. "Frank?" I called out, setting the bags on the kitchen counter. "I picked up your favorite cookies." No answer. Unease crept up my spine as I made my way to the living room. That's when I saw him, slumped in his favorite armchair, remote control still clutched in his lifeless hand. "Oh, God," I whispered, rushing to his side. "Frank! Frank! Can you hear me?" His skin was cold to the touch. I fumbled for my phone, dialing 911 with shaking fingers. 911, what's your emergency?" "My father-in-law," I gasped. I think he's dead." The next few hours passed in a blur. Paramedics, police officers, and finally, my husband Ethan arrived. I watched as he stood in the doorway, his face a mask of shock and something else, something I couldn't quite place. "Sarah," he said, his voice oddly flat. "What happened?" I shook my head, fighting back tears. "I don't know. I just found him like this when I came to drop off groceries." Ethan nodded, his eyes never leaving his father's body as it was zipped into a black bag. "Did you know?" he asked suddenly. "Know what?" He turned to me, his gaze hard. "About the gambling." I blinked, caught off guard. "Gambling? What are you talking about?" Ethan let out a bitter laugh. "Of course you didn't. He was always so good at hiding it." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a crumpled piece of paper. "I found this in his desk drawer last week. Look." I took the paper, my eyes widening as I scanned its contents. It was a loan agreement for an astronomical sum, signed by Frank just days ago. "Oh, Ethan," I breathed. "I had no idea." He snatched the paper back, his jaw clenched. Neither did I, not until it was too late. As the last of the officials left, Ethan and I sat in stunned silence on the couch. The weight of Frank's secret hung heavy between us. "What are we going to tell your mother?" I asked softly. Ethan's laugh was hollow. "The truth, I suppose, that her beloved husband was a lying, cheating gambler who left us with nothing but debt." I reached for his hand, but he pulled away. "Ethan, please. He was still your father." "Was he?" Ethan stood abruptly, pacing the room. "A father doesn't do this to his family, Sarah. He doesn't lie and steal and—" His voice broke, and I saw a flash of the pain he was trying so hard to hide. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, standing to embrace him. But Ethan stepped back, his eyes cold. "Don't be. He got what he deserved." I stared at my husband, shocked by the venom in his voice. This wasn't the Ethan I knew, the kind and gentle man I'd married. In that moment, I felt a chill of fear. "We should call your mother," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "She'll want to know." Ethan nodded, pulling out his phone. As he dialed, I retreated to the kitchen, needing a moment to collect myself. I leaned against the counter, my mind reeling. How had I not known about Frank's gambling? And more importantly, what would this mean for our family? I thought of Marie, Ethan's doting mother, and how devastated she would be. From the living room, I heard Ethan's voice, unnaturally calm as he delivered the news. "Mom, it's Dad. He's gone." I closed my eyes, feeling the world shift beneath my feet. Nothing would ever be the same after today. As I listened to Ethan's one-sided conversation, a nagging thought wormed its way into my mind. If Frank had kept such a massive secret from all of us, what else didn't we know? The days following Frank's funeral were a blur of hushed conversations and tense silences. I watched Ethan like a hawk, searching for any sign of the man I married beneath this cold, angry stranger who had taken his place. One evening, as I was clearing the dinner dishes, Ethan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his face hardening. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "Fine," he snapped, shoving the phone in his pocket. "I'm going out." "Out, Ethan, it's nearly 9. The slam of the front door cut me off. I sank into a chair, my heart racing. This wasn't like him at all. Daisy, sensing my distress, jumped onto my lap. I buried my face in her soft fur, fighting back tears. "What's happening to us, girl?" Hours ticked by. I tried calling Ethan, but it went straight to voicemail. By midnight, worry had given way to anger. I was about to call the police when I heard the front door open. Ethan stumbled in, reeking of alcohol and something else. Smoke? No, not quite. Where have you been? I demanded, rising to meet him. He waved me off, nearly losing his balance. Out! Told you. You're drunk, I said, disbelief coloring my voice. Ethan rarely drank, and never to excess. He laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that made me flinch. Observant as always, Sarah. What's gotten into you? I reached for him, but he jerked away. Don't, he growled. Just don't. I watched helplessly as he staggered to our bedroom, slamming the door behind him. Sleep eluded me that night, as I tossed and turned on the couch, my mind racing. The next morning, I woke to find Ethan gone. A hastily scrawled note on the kitchen counter read, "Working late. Don't wait up." I crumpled the note, anger and fear warring in my chest. This couldn't go on. That afternoon, I made a decision. I drove to Marie's house, hoping she might have some insight into her son's behavior. Marie answered the door, her eyes red-rimmed. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you about Ethan," I said, stepping inside. "He's not himself, Marie. I'm worried." She led me to the living room, gesturing for me to sit. "What do you mean, not himself?" I took a deep breath. "He's drinking, staying out late. He won't talk to me. It's like he's turning into Frank." Marie's face darkened. "Don't you dare compare my son to that man." "Marie, please," I pleaded. "I'm just trying to understand." "Understand what?" she snapped. "That my husband was a liar? That he left us with nothing but debt and shame?" I blinked, taken aback by her vehemence. I didn't know it was that bad." Marie laughed bitterly. "Of course you didn't. Frank was very good at hiding things." She fixed me with a hard stare. "And now you're accusing Ethan of the same?" "No, I'm just worried about him, about us." She stood abruptly. "My son is grieving, Sarah. He needs support, not accusations. If you can't provide that, perhaps you should reconsider your place in his life." I left Marie's house feeling worse than when I'd arrived. As I pulled into our driveway, I noticed Ethan's car was back. Relief flooded through me. But when I entered the house, that relief turned to ice in my veins. Ethan was at his father's desk, papers strewn everywhere, and in his hand was a familiar slip of paper, a betting slip. "Ethan?" I whispered, my voice shaking. He looked up, his eyes wild. "I figured it out, Sarah. I know how to fix everything." "What are you talking about?" He waved the betting slip. "Dad's system. It wasn't perfect, but I can make it work. I can win back everything he lost and more." I felt the floor tilt beneath me. This couldn't be happening. "Ethan, no. You can't." "I can," he insisted, a manic gleam in his eye. "And I will. You'll see, Sarah, I'll make everything right again." As I stared at my husband, a stranger wearing Ethan's face, I realized with sickening clarity that our troubles were only just beginning. The weeks that followed were a nightmare. Ethan's obsession with gambling consumed him, and our once peaceful home became a battleground. I tried everything to reason with him, but my words fell on deaf ears. One evening, I came home from grocery shopping to find Ethan pacing in the living room, his face ashen. "Ethan, what's wrong?" He whirled on me, eyes wild. "Where's your jewelry box?" My blood ran cold. "Why?" "I need it," he said, his voice desperate. "Just for a little while. I'm so close, Sarah. One more bet and I can win it all back." I backed away, shaking my head. "No, absolutely not. You don't understand." He lunged forward, grabbing my arms. "I have to do this." I wrenched free, heart pounding. "Stop it, Ethan. This has to end." "End?" He laughed bitterly. "It's only just beginning. I've figured it out, Sarah. Dad's system works. I just need a little more capital." "Listen to yourself," I cried. "You sound just like him." The moment the words left my mouth, I knew I'd made a mistake. Ethan's face contorted with rage. "I am nothing like him," he roared, sweeping his arm across the coffee table. Books and knickknacks crashed to the floor. I flinched, backing towards the door. "Ethan, please, you need help." "What I need," he snarled, "is a wife who supports me." Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then grabbed his keys. "Where are you going?" I asked, dreading the answer. "Out," he snapped. "Don't wait up." The door slammed behind him, leaving me in stunned silence. Daisy crept out from under the couch, meowing softly. I scooped her up, burying my face in her fur as tears began to fall. "What am I going to do, girl?" I whispered. The next morning, I woke to find Ethan hadn't come home. Worry gnawed at me as I went through the motions of my day. By noon, I couldn't take it anymore. I called Marie. "Have you heard from Ethan?" I asked when she answered. "Of course," she replied, her tone frosty. He's here now. Relief washed over me, quickly followed by anger. He is. Put him on, please. I don't think that's a good idea, Marie said. He's very upset. Upset? I'm the one who should be upset. Do you have any idea what's been going on? Marie's voice hardened. I know my son is going through a difficult time, and his wife isn't being very supportive. I gaped at the phone. Supportive? He's gambling away everything we have. Don't be ridiculous, Marie scoffed. Ethan would never do that. You're overreacting, as usual. I am not, I began, but she cut me off. I think it's best if Ethan stays here for a while. You clearly need some time to get your priorities straight. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, disbelief and rage warring inside me. How could she be so blind? With shaking hands, I logged into our joint bank account. My heart stopped. Our savings were gone. Every last penny. In a daze, I walked to our bedroom and opened my jewelry box. Empty. The necklace Ethan had given me for our anniversary, the earrings from my grandmother, all gone. As the reality of our situation crashed over me, a cold determination settled in my chest. I couldn't let this continue. I had to protect myself, even if it meant leaving the man I loved. I pulled out a suitcase and began to pack. As I zipped it closed, my eyes fell on a framed photo of Ethan and me on our wedding day. We looked so happy, so full of hope for the future. With a sob, I placed the photo face down. That Ethan was gone, replaced by a stranger I no longer recognized. And I couldn't wait around, hoping he'd come back. As I loaded Daisy into her carrier and my suitcase into the car, I took one last look at the house we'd made a home. Then, with a heavy heart but a firm resolve, I drove away, leaving behind the shattered remains of the life we'd built together. I found temporary refuge at my friend Lisa's apartment, but I knew I couldn't hide forever. After a sleepless night, I steeled myself and dialed Marie's number. It was time to face this head-on. Sarah? Marie's voice was laced with surprise and a hint of disdain. What do you want? We need to talk, I said firmly. About Ethan. Can I come over? A long pause. Fine, but make it quick. An hour later, I stood on Marie's doorstep, heart pounding. She opened the door, her lips pressed into a thin line. Where's Ethan? I asked, stepping inside. Out, she replied curtly. Now what's this about? I took a deep breath. Marie, Ethan has a gambling problem. He's emptied our bank accounts, stolen my jewelry. Nonsense, Marie interrupted. Ethan would never do such a thing. You're just trying to cover up your own failings as a wife. I gaped at her. My failings? Marie, open your eyes. Your son needs help. The only thing my son needs, she hissed, is for you to stop making these ridiculous accusations. Just then the front door burst open. Ethan stumbled in, eyes bloodshot, clothes disheveled. Mom, He froze when he saw me. Sarah, what are you doing here? Trying to knock some sense into your mother, I said, my voice shaking. Ethan, please, tell her the truth. He looked between us, panic flashing across his face. Then, to my horror, he turned to Marie with a pleading expression. Mom, don't listen to her. Sarah's been acting crazy lately. She's the one with the problem. I couldn't believe my ears. Ethan, how can you? See? Marie cut in triumphantly. I knew you were lying. Get out of my house, Sarah, now. No, I said, standing my ground. Not until you both face reality. Ethan, show her your betting slips. Show her our empty bank accounts. Ethan's face contorted with rage. He lunged forward, grabbing my arm roughly. I said, shut up. Ethan, Marie gasped. Let her go. For a moment I saw a flicker of the old Ethan in his eyes, shock at his own actions. He released me, stumbling back. I'm sorry, he mumbled. I didn't mean... I rubbed my arm, fighting back tears. This isn't you, Ethan. Please let us help you. Marie looked between us, uncertainty creeping into her expression for the first time. Ethan, darling, what's going on? Ethan's shoulders slumped. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled betting slip. I messed up, Mom. I thought I could fix it, but... Marie's face drained of color as she read the slip. Oh, Ethan, how much? Everything, he whispered. I've lost everything. The room fell silent. I watched as the truth finally sank in for Marie, her world crumbling around her, just as mine had. We need to get you help, I said softly. Real help, Ethan, before it's too late. He nodded, tears streaming down his face. I know. I'm so sorry, Sarah, for everything. As I looked at my broken husband and his shattered mother, I felt a mix of emotions, relief that the truth was finally out, anger at the pain they'd put me through, and a tiny spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find a way through this. But as Ethan reached for me, I stepped back. I can't stay here, I said. I need time to think, to figure out what's best for me. Sarah, please, Ethan begged. Don't leave. I met his gaze, my heart breaking all over again. I'm sorry, Ethan, but I have to protect myself now. I hope you get the help you need, I really do. But I can't be the one to save you. With that, I turned and walked out the door, leaving behind the ruins of the life I once knew. As I drove away, I realized that for the first time in months, I could breathe again. The road ahead was uncertain, but at least now I was in control of my own destiny. The weeks following my confrontation with Ethan and Marie were a blur of sleepless nights and anxiety-filled days. I threw myself into my writing, grateful for the distraction it provided. Daisy was my constant companion, her purrs a soothing balm for my frayed nerves. One afternoon, as I was working on a deadline, my phone buzzed. Ethan's name flashed on the screen. My heart raced as I answered. Sarah? His voice was small, hesitant. Can we talk? I took a deep breath. About what, Ethan? I've started therapy. Gamblers Anonymous, too. I want to make things right. I closed my eyes, fighting the surge of hope his words triggered. I'm glad you're getting help, but... Please, he interrupted. Just hear me out. Can we meet? Against my better judgment, I agreed. An hour later, I found myself sitting across from Ethan in a quiet cafe. He looked better than the last time I'd seen him. Less haggard, more like the man I'd married. I'm so sorry, Sarah, he began, his eyes brimming with tears. For everything. I know I've hurt you beyond words. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I've been working hard in therapy, he continued. I understand now how my addiction affected you, how I pushed you away. I want to make amends. As he spoke, I felt my resolve wavering. This was the Ethan I knew, the one I'd fallen in love with. But then I remembered the emptied bank accounts, the stolen jewelry, the lies. I appreciate that, Ethan, I said carefully. But I don't know if... He reached across the table, taking my hand. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I love you, Sarah. We can start over, build something new. I pulled my hand away, my mind reeling. I need time to think, I said, standing up. I can't make any decisions right now. As I left the cafe, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Marie. Sarah, we need to talk, she said without preamble. It's about Ethan's inheritance. Confused, I agreed to meet her at her house. When I arrived, Marie ushered me in, her face uncharacteristically somber. I've made a terrible mistake, she said, gesturing for me to sit. I've enabled Ethan's behavior for far too long. I stared at her, shocked by this admission. There's something you should know, she continued. Frank left a substantial inheritance for Ethan, but with conditions. He must complete a rehabilitation program and demonstrate financial responsibility. My mind raced. Does Ethan know about this? Marie shook her head. No, I was afraid it would push him further away, but now I see that was wrong. She took a deep breath. I want to propose something, a divorce settlement with a hefty alimony for you. I gaped at her. What? It's the least I can do, she said. You've suffered enough. This way you'll be taken care of, and Ethan will have the motivation he needs to get better. I sat back, stunned. The offer was tempting, a clean break, financial security, but something didn't sit right. And what about Ethan? I asked. He's trying to get better. Wouldn't this feel like abandonment? Marie's eyes hardened. Sometimes tough love is necessary. You've given enough, Sarah. It's time to think of yourself. As I left Marie's house, my mind was in turmoil. Ethan's apparent progress, Marie's surprising offer, the revelation about the inheritance. It was all too much. Back in my temporary apartment, I scooped up Daisy, burying my face in her fur. What should I do, girl? I whispered. The choice before me was clear, yet impossibly difficult. Do I give Ethan another chance, risking my heart and financial security? Or do I accept Marie's offer, ensuring my own well-being, but potentially derailing Ethan's recovery? As night fell, I sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker. I knew that by morning, I would have to make a decision that would change the course of all our lives forever. The morning after my conversation with Marie, I woke with a sense of dread. I had to make a decision, and fast. As I sipped my coffee, my phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. Can we talk? It's important. My heart raced. Did he know about Marie's offer? I agreed to meet him at our old favorite park, a place that once held happy memories but now felt tainted by recent events. Ethan was already there when I arrived, pacing nervously, When he saw me, his face lit up with hope, making my chest tighten. "Sarah," he said, reaching for my hand. I let him take it, noticing how his palm felt clammy against mine. "I have something to tell you." I braced myself. "What is it, Ethan?" He took a deep breath. "I've been offered a spot in an intensive rehabilitation program. 6 months, out of state. I want to go, to get better, for us." I felt a mix of emotions, pride, hope, and an overwhelming sadness. "That's wonderful, Ethan. I'm proud of you for taking this step." His eyes searched mine. "Will you wait for me? Give us another chance when I come back?" Before I could respond, my phone rang. It was Marie. With a sinking feeling, I answered. "Sarah." Marie's voice was frantic. "I need to see you immediately. It's about the divorce settlement." I looked at Ethan, who was watching me with confusion. "I'll be right there," I said, hanging up. "What's going on?" Ethan asked, his brow furrowed. I took a deep breath. "Your mother offered me a divorce settlement with alimony." Ethan's face drained of color. "What? When?" "Yesterday," I admitted. I haven't decided anything yet." Anger flashed in Ethan's eyes. "So while I've been working on getting better, you've been plotting to leave me?" "No," I protested. "It's not like that. I was going to tell you." "Save it," he spat. "I should have known you'd give up on me." As Ethan stormed off, I felt my world crumbling. I had to see Marie to understand what was happening. When I arrived at Marie's house, I found her in a state of panic. "Sarah, thank goodness you're here. We have a problem." "What kind of problem?" I asked warily. Marie wrung her hands. "The inheritance, it's gone." I stared at her, uncomprehending. "What do you mean, gone?" "I made a terrible mistake," she whispered. "I thought I could double it, make things right, but I lost it all." The realization hit me like a truck. "You gambled it away." Marie nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I was trying to fix things, to make up for enabling Ethan, but I've ruined everything." I felt a hysterical laugh bubble up in my throat. "So, there's no alimony? No inheritance for Ethan?" "Nothing," Marie confirmed. "We're both broke." As the gravity of the situation sank in, I felt a strange sense of clarity. All this time I'd been torn between my love for Ethan and my need for security. But now, with everything stripped away, I realized what truly mattered. "I have to go," I said abruptly, leaving a sobbing Marie behind. I raced back to the park, praying Ethan was still there. To my relief, I found him sitting on our old bench, head in his hands. "Ethan," I called out, breathless. He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. "Come to say goodbye?" I shook my head, sitting beside him. "No, I came to say I'm sorry, and that I love you." Ethan's eyes widened in surprise. "But the settlement—" "There is no settlement," I explained, recounting Marie's confession. "But that doesn't matter. What matters is us fighting this together." As Ethan pulled me into a tight embrace, I felt a glimmer of hope. We had a long, hard road ahead of us, but for the first time in months, I felt like we might just make it. But as we sat there, clinging to each other and our fragile new beginning, I couldn't shake the feeling that our biggest challenge was yet to come. The day Ethan was set to leave for rehab dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the turmoil in my heart. We stood in the airport, the weight of unsaid words hanging between us. "I'll call you when I can," Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. "I promise, Sarah, I'll get better." I nodded, fighting back tears. "I know you will. I believe in you." As I watched him disappear through security, a mix of hope and fear churned in my stomach. 6 months. We could make it through 6 months. But life had other plans. 2 weeks after Ethan left, I received a frantic call from Marie. "Sarah, you need to come over right away. It's about Ethan." My heart raced as I drove to Marie's house. Had something happened at the rehab center? Marie was pacing when I arrived, her face ashen. "I've made a terrible mistake," she said, her voice quavering. "What are you talking about?" I asked, dread building in my chest. She handed me a stack of papers, her hands shaking. "I found these in Ethan's old room. They're betting slips, recent ones." I flipped through the papers, my world tilting on its axis. The dates on the slips were all from after Ethan had supposedly started his recovery. Some were from just days before he left for rehab. "This can't be right," I whispered, but the evidence was undeniable. Marie collapsed into a chair, sobbing. "I've enabled him again, haven't I? I gave him money for expenses at rehab, but he never went, did he?" The realization hit me like a physical blow. Ethan had lied. Again, he wasn't in rehab. He was out there somewhere. gambling away our last chance at a future. As if on cue, my phone rang. An unknown number. "Hello?" I answered, my voice trembling. "Is this Sarah?" A gruff male voice asked, "I'm calling about your husband, Ethan." My blood ran cold. "Yes, this is Sarah. What's happened?" "Ma'am, I'm afraid your husband owes a substantial amount of money to some less than reputable individuals. They're looking for him and they're not happy." The world seemed to spin around me. "How much?" I managed to ask. The figure he named made my knees buckle. It was more than we could ever hope to repay. "You have 48 hours to come up with the money," the voice continued, "or things might get unpleasant for Ethan." The line went dead. I looked at Marie, who had heard every word, her face a mask of horror. "What are we going to do?" she whispered. In that moment, something inside me snapped. The fear, the anger, the betrayal, it all crystallized into a cold, hard resolve. "We're not doing anything," I said, my voice steady. "I'm done cleaning up Ethan's messes. He made this bed. Now he has to lie in it," Marie gasped. "But Sarah, they could hurt him." I turned to her, years of pent-up frustration boiling over. "And what about how he's hurt us? How he's lied, stolen, and gambled away our futures? When does it end, Marie?" She flinched at my words, but I couldn't stop. "We've coddled him, made excuses for him, and look where it's gotten us. No more." As I spoke, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. For too long, I'd put Ethan's needs before my own. No more. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. "I'm leaving, Marie. For good this time." "Where will you go?" she asked, her voice small. I paused at the threshold, a glimmer of my new future taking shape in my mind. Somewhere Ethan can't find me, somewhere I can start over. As I walked out of Marie's house for the last time, I felt a mix of terror and exhilaration. I had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in years, it was mine to shape. I got into my car, Daisy meowing softly from her carrier in the back seat. As I drove away from the life I'd known, I realized that this wasn't just an ending. It was a beginning. 6 months after I left, I found myself in a small coastal town, rebuilding my life piece by piece. My writing career had taken off, and Daisy and I had settled into a cozy apartment overlooking the ocean. For the first time in years, I felt at peace. Then, on a crisp autumn morning, my phone rang. Marie's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated before answering. "Hello? Sarah? Sarah?" Marie's voice was thin, desperate. "I need your help, please." I closed my eyes, steeling myself. "What is it, Marie?" "It's Ethan," she sobbed. "He's in trouble. Those men he owes money to, they're threatening him. Us, I don't know what to do." A familiar knot of anxiety formed in my stomach. "I'm sorry, Marie, but I can't get involved. Not again." "But Sarah, you're the only one who can help. You always knew how to handle these situations." I felt a flicker of anger. And look where that got me. I'm done cleaning up after Ethan's messes. "Please," Marie begged. "I'll do anything. I'll sell the house, my jewelry, everything. Just help us one last time." I paused, considering her words. Then, slowly, I made a decision that would change everything. "Okay, Marie," I said, my voice steady. "I'll help, but not in the way you think." I booked a flight back to my old town, a mix of dread and determination coursing through me. When I arrived at Marie's house, I found her a shell of her former self, aged beyond her years. "Thank you for coming," she whispered, ushering me inside. I took a deep breath. "Before we go any further, there's something you need to know, Marie. About Ethan. About everything." Over the next hour, I laid out the whole truth. Ethan's continued gambling, his lies about rehab, the depth of his debts. With each revelation, I watched Marie's world crumble a little more. But why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked, her voice barely audible. I met her gaze steadily. "Would you have believed me? Or would you have accused me of lying? Like you always did." Marie flinched, the truth of my words hitting home. "I'm telling you now," I continued, "because it's time for this cycle to end, for all of us." I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. "Hello? Yes, I'd like to report a gambling addiction and associated criminal activities." Marie's eyes widened in shock. "What are you doing?" I held up a hand, silencing her. "Yes, I have evidence. Betting slips, bank statements, everything." As I spoke with the authorities, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. This was it, the final step in breaking free from the toxic cycle that had consumed our lives. When I hung up, Marie was crying softly. "How could you?" she whispered. I took her hand, surprising both of us. "This is the only way, Marie. Ethan needs real help, not enablers, and you need to break free too. As we waited for the police to arrive, I felt a strange sense of calm. This wasn't revenge, I realized. It was redemption, for all of us. Hours later, as I watched Ethan being led away in handcuffs, a mix of emotions washed over me. Sadness for the man I once loved, relief that it was finally over, and hope for a future free from the shadows of addiction and deceit. Marie stood beside me, her face tear-stained but resolute. "What happens now?" she asked. I squeezed her hand gently. "Now we heal, separately but maybe someday together." As I drove back to the airport, the sun setting over my old hometown, I felt a sense of closure. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, I was facing it on my own terms. Back in my coastal refuge, I sat on the balcony with Daisy purring in my lap, watching the waves crash against the shore. I thought about trust, about honesty, about the complex web of love and hurt that binds families together. And as the stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, I realized that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is to let go of the past and embrace an uncertain but hopeful future. With a smile, I picked up my pen and began to write. My story wasn't over. It was just beginning.